want to do prevention. We want to start taking things and doing things correctly in order to decrease the risk of those problems. And let's just give you an example. Cognition. Mild cognitive decline occurs early, 30s to 40s. People don't even realize that their cognitive abilities have declined. Dementia takes 15, 20 years to develop before you can even realize that, wow, it's already here. By 80 to 85 years old, scary, 50% of Americans are considered demented. So 1 out of every 2. You know, they used to say, look at your neighbor, but the other one is going to be demented. Scary. It's not a fun thing to do. But is there something you can do to decrease that? Because dementia is a terrible thing. It's an accelerated form of brain aging. It's not good. Nobody wants to have dementia. Nobody wants to have Alzheimer's disease. But wow, over the years, look how Alzheimer's has just zoomed up. And it's terrible now. We have a huge amount of Alzheimer's disease now, and it's getting worse and worse every year. Maybe this is something that we can decrease if we do the right things. Average survival of a patient with Alzheimer's disease after a diagnosis of dementia ranges from 4 to 8 years. And the deaths caused by Alzheimer's, 100,000 lives per year. 6th leading cause of deaths for adults. Young patients, they get it worse than the older ones. It's a lot more severe. Average stay in nursing homes, about 3 years if you're young, about 6 years if you're an older patient, and tremendous costs. In Oklahoma alone, there's $1 billion just to take care of Alzheimer's disease. And that was just to take care of the health, and not to mention all the other things that need to have done when you have Alzheimer's by your family. $20,000 per year per victim is what they estimate for nursing costs, etc. A lot of money. But here's a nice thing that we can do. And Mark Twain said it very well. The main distinguishing characteristic between man and the lower animals is the desire to take pills. So we can take supplements to help us out. I mentioned that eating alone isn't enough, so we need to take supplements. First supplement we're going to talk about is omega-3 free fatty acids, or those good old fish oils, DHA and EPA. It has to be those 2 types of omega-3s. Those are the best types, and you need a lot of it. As a matter of fact, the higher amount of omegas in your blood, the higher the survival and the less cardiovascular disease you're going to have. The higher the amount of omegas, the less neurological dementia problems you're going to have. In other words, less chance of you having Alzheimer's disease. Pretty easy thing to do, simple things to take. As the level of omegas go up, the level of omegas go up, cardiovascular disease decreases. And as the level of omegas go down, you have more deaths. It's a problem. So let's just take some omegas. A pretty easy thing to do. We tell people get EPA and DHA, get omegas. You got to get those 2, and you have to get about a gram a day, 1,000 milligrams. We have this preparation, 950 grams, but the key thing is they have to be the EPA and DHA. Now, if you just want to take it on a regular basis, just preventative, you just take 1 gram a day. If you want better maintenance, you do 2 to 3 grams a day. If you want cardio protection and maybe decrease triglycerides, if you have high triglycerides, you do about 4 to 5 grams a day. And if you want to decrease neurological problems, 7 to 8 grams a day. As a matter of fact, this is an oil, and it's a great oil. It's omega-3 oils. Well, another oil you can take is coconut oil. It doesn't have a lot of omegas, but it's what they call medium-chain fatty acids, and it also has been associated with a decrease in Alzheimer's disease and neurological problems like Parkinson's. So it's a good thing to have there too. It's coconut oil. Vitamin E. Second nutrient, great nutrient. We're going to talk about this one because it's such an easy thing to do, is to just take a supplement of vitamin D. It is the anti-aging vitamin, in my opinion. It boosts immunity. It boosts your ability to cause an inflammatory reaction. It preserves bone, brain, your heart. It preserves all those things and reduces the risk of multiple different cancers. It helps you to regulate blood glucose. It helps to reduce diabetes risk, a lot of different things. You need vitamin E to absorb calcium. And if you don't have adequate D, adequate absorption of calcium, you can develop a degradation of your bones called osteoporosis or osteopenia. It's very important to take D with calcium in order to prevent that, because it can reduce the risk of you developing hip fractures, vertebral fractures, and those things are debilitating in the degenerative process. Hormones also help out to decrease the risk of osteoporosis, and that's another thing that we can talk about. You can look on my other talk, and it discusses that a little bit more. Oh, wow, we talked about Alzheimer's. Vitamin D protects against that too. It exerts a neuroprotective effect. There was a Swedish study that was performed, and they gave people high amounts of vitamin E, and they had higher cognitive function. They thought better. Low levels of vitamin E were associated with an increased risk of cognitive impairment, and low levels of vitamin E, well, that should be D. Low levels of vitamin D increase the risk of Alzheimer's disease. So there's a lot of different things that vitamin D does on the brain. It's a neuroactive steroid. It is necessary in brain development and brain function. Deficiencies are associated with all those different problems: Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, depression, MS, cognitive decline occurs, and schizophrenia. So it's very important. They did a study. They looked at elderly Italians. If you had low vitamin D levels, you had a 60% higher risk of developing cognitive decline in those elderly Italians. 60% higher risk. All they had to do was take vitamin D. In the United States, they looked at males. If they had low levels of vitamin D, there was a 41% increased risk of cognitive decline. It's a pretty easy thing to do, just take a vitamin D. Oh, and here's a major thing that I think is very, very important, is that vitamin D lowers the risk of a lot of different cancers. So look at which kind of cancers it decreases the risk of. Breast, prostate, colon, it promotes normal cell growth. Breast, prostate, and colon. Didn't we hear about that somewhere before? Was it that number 2 and 3, I believe? Pretty amazing, huh? So some studies confirm this. 85,000 cases of breast cancer could be prevented in North America alone if people just had sufficient levels of vitamin D. In California, one study showed that if you just take 3,500 units a day, you can reduce your risk of breast cancer by half. Pretty significant, in my opinion. All you had to do is take an easy little vitamin. Current medium intake of vitamin D in the United States, only 230 units. Notice 3,500. We recommend 5,000 or more. But the key thing is you want to get a blood level. You want to get the blood level up there. Breast cancer in this other study was reduced. If the blood level was 34 nanograms, it reduced it 30%. If it was over 50, it reduced it 83% in that one study. And that's compared to baseline, because most people only have about 25 nanograms per ml in the blood. So this is an interesting slide. It kind of gives you an idea about vitamin D level. In the middle here, we got somewhere around 25 and below. You've got reduction in rickets. Rickets is that old disease that people used to have because they never went out in the sun and got vitamin D as they were growing up. They got bow-legged. Well, we kind of reduced that nowadays. We don't really have that. But it's really, all you need is a little bit of vitamin D to prevent that. But look on the other side. If you get higher levels in your serum of vitamin D, all the different cancers that you can decrease. You can decrease the risk of breast cancer, ovarian cancer, colon cancer, lymphoma. You can also reduce the risk of diabetes. Pretty amazing stuff. All you had to do is take a little pill of vitamin D a day. Another study, a collaborative study, showed that if you take adequate vitamin D, 50% of falls in women, 50% of fractures are decreased, multiple sclerosis is decreased, diabetes. All these things suggest that it's so easy to decrease it. So take vitamin D. Pretty easy. Most people are deficient. You want to have blood levels. We do blood levels on a regular basis, especially with our patients that are on our hormone pellet therapy, and anybody who really wants it. And we want to get the level up to a good level. We like to get it around 65 to, say, 80 for the best blood levels, so that the metabolism better and you have all these benefits. Pretty easy thing to do. Just take a vitamin D every day. What are the risks? Everybody wants to know. What's the risk? There's a theoretical risk. The theoretical risk is that it's going to increase your calcium absorption. Is it clinically significant? Hasn't been shown that so far. So let's talk about another nutrient, curcumin, turmeric curcumin. It's an herb, and it's been shown to be anti-inflammatory and anti-neoplastic, which is kind of interesting. Anti-inflammation, anti-neoplastic. That means that it decreases the risk of you having cancers. And it's anti-inflammatory. Remember, one of the things I said, one of the injuries that can occur is that DNA can be damaged in your body, can mutate. And we have cancer cells in our body every day. And if our immune system is good, it fights off those little teeny mutations every single day, so it prevents us from having cancers. Not a bad way to go. It's not going to hurt. Just take some curcumin and some of the other anti-inflammatories. Omegas were anti-inflammatories. But curcumin is a good one. It appears to bind to the vitamin D receptor and work synergistically with vitamin D. It decreases the risk of heart disease and cerebral ischemia because of its anti-inflammatory effect. It's a good one to take. It improves the memory. It's good for the mentation. Decreases inflammatory diseases like irritable bowel syndrome, overactive bladder. And it does several things to decrease arthritic type diseases. The dose is 1,000 milligrams twice a day, once in the morning, once at night. Vitamin E is a good antioxidant. It's another good supplement that you can take. It's found in the micronutrient test. Necessary for smooth muscle growth. It is an inflammatory modulator. In other words, it improves your inflammation so that you don't get the excessive amount. It inhibits platelet aggregation, decreases clotting. That may decrease your risk of strokes, and it decreases abnormal lipids. But you got to get the right one. The preferred one is a high amount of gamma, maybe delta, and mixed tocopherols. They have been shown to reduce the risk of certain cancers, like prostate, breast, and pancreatic cancer. What you buy most of the time over the counter is the alpha form of the tocopherol. That's the most common. It's the cheapest kind. The problem is it's not as effective as the other ones. We don't even sell the alpha anymore. We just do the high gammas because studies show that it's the best. Let's talk about DHEA, or what we call the mother of all hormones. Why? It's because DHEA, which is otherwise called dihydroepiandrosterone, is the precursor of all your other steroid hormones. Your body has cholesterol, makes cholesterol, and from cholesterol it makes DHEA, pregnenolone, and from there it goes into progesterone, testosterone, estradiol, cortisol, and some of the mineralocorticoids. It produces all the other hormones. So DHEA is the mother. And you're supposed to have a lot of DHEA in your body. Why? Because it's not only a precursor, but it's a great antioxidant. And the bottom line is, people who live longer seem to have high levels of DHEA in their body. And it improves a lot of other things, symptoms of menopause, you have an increased sexual response, and it helps you to lose the weight centrally too. So I highly recommend that. If you have low levels of DHEA, you have an association with increased mortality with cardiovascular disease, diabetes, obesity, immune dysfunction, autoimmune disease, cancer, hypertension, cardiovascular disease, depression, low libido, erectile dysfunction, osteoporosis. A lot of things can happen worse if you don't have adequate levels of DHEA. We think it's very important in our patients that we monitor their hormones. We always recommend that they do adequate DHEA. We do their blood levels to make sure it's all okay. DHEA is helpful in Alzheimer's disease also. Studies have shown that DHEA increases the immune response and helps in people with Alzheimer's disease and other forms of dementia. Let's talk about another one now called melatonin. It comes from the pineal gland. The pineal gland is in the brain, and as we get older, the amount of melatonin that is secreted is less and less. Melatonin is secreted by the pineal gland during darkness. In other words, when we're asleep, when we're young, we sleep real well. We have lots of melatonin being produced by our pineal gland. And we sleep pretty good. But as you get older, if you notice, maybe all of you have noticed, that ability to sleep kind of goes down. So it will decrease on approximately 10 to 15% for every decade. So pretty soon you get less and less and less, and you don't sleep so well. So we recommend you go on some sort of supplementation. In addition, melatonin also lowers your body melatonin lowers your body temperature and controls your sleep-wake cycle. So here we go. Here's a graph of the level of melatonin throughout the years, and you can see it's going down as we get older. You get peaks at nighttime. When you're young, you get nice peaks, 50 to 55, lower peaks, and 82 to 86, lower peaks. So why not supplement it? Because melatonin is also one of those great antioxidants that soaks up all those free radicals, those electrons that can damage the tissues. It protects your lipids, proteins, your DNA, and it stimulates glutathione. I mentioned glutathione earlier. Glutathione is one of the major antioxidants in our body, and if you take glutathione or have a high amount of glutathione, it has an anti-aging effect on you. And we check for glutathione in the micronutrient tests, and it's amazing how many people are deficient in glutathione. It protects mitochondria, it protects against ischemic injury, protects against ionizing radiation. So if an atom bomb blows up, let's hope you have a lot of melatonin in your body. Okay, it also boosts immunity. Boosts that immunity, inhibits tumor growth, it counteracts stress-induced immunological problems. It's increased in... It increases CD4 cells and natural killer cells, which are inflammatory cells. And remember that cytokine system that recruits more of the inflammation into an area that's needed? It helps boost that up too. It decreases the excessive amount, though, so that it is an immune modulator, and you get better immune response. So melatonin's low levels are seen with a lot of different disease states. They're seen with Alzheimer's, cardiovascular disease, insulin resistance, or diabetes. Breast cancer, you see low levels of melatonin. Migraine headaches, cataracts, gastric ulcers, and gastritis. And those are inflammatory processes. Gastric ulcers and colitis, they cause that leaky membrane, that leaky permeability through the gut that can cause all kinds of problems with your health. And we like to have higher levels of melatonin, but we also like to take care of the inflammation in the gut, and we can talk about that at another time. Melatonin does give a protective effect on the amyloid synthesis in your brain. The amyloid is the thing, excessive amyloid on the nerve cells causes the Alzheimer's disease. So if you can have melatonin, it's a kind of a protective effect against that. It's also neuroprotective for Parkinson's disease. So it decreases Alzheimer's disease, it decreases cardiovascular disease by a lot of things, decreases breast cancer, migraine headaches, cataracts, pretty good stuff. And if you add all that up, your lifespan may be lengthened if you just take a little melatonin. Protects aging through quenching of free radicals and boosts the immune system. This graph here kind of shows that if you have melatonin at night, you get a better effect than if you have it if you take it during the day. So you should take your melatonin at night. That's the best time to do it. And basically in this graph, what it showed is that they gave melatonin to mice, and they lived longer. So why not take it? In many people, it does improve deep sleep. And when you sleep deeply, your growth hormone is released. So you get an increase in growth hormone. A lot of people have heard that growth hormone is one of those anti-aging type hormones. So an easy thing to do to increase your growth hormone, sleep well. Now some people may need a lot more melatonin than just 3 milligrams. Some people may need 10, may need 20 milligrams of melatonin in order to get better sleep. But it does help. It also helps out in osteoporosis, another inflammatory disease. And here's an interesting thing. If you're going to go to Europe or Hawaii, it helps in jet lag. You take 3 to 6 milligrams on the plane at the time that you take off. You take it at bedtime in your destination. You expose yourself to bright light in the morning upon arrival, and you take more at that bedtime, and it helps decrease jet lag. Another Good antioxidant, another supplement is resveratrol. It also has antioxidant and anti-inflammatory processes. It neuroregenerative properties and neuroprotective qualities. It's beneficial for a lot of different states, Alzheimer's, stroke, Parkinson's disease, and it has also been shown to inhibit breast cancer growth in vitro. It has estrogenic properties and maybe a little anti-cancer, maybe cardioprotective. But resveratrol is a wonderful supplement that people can take. It's very easy. It works directly on the DNA and what they call the SIRT1 gene, and that is what they call the longevity gene. It can actually extend the lifetime of an organism up to 70%. One of the things that can happen is with resveratrol is that you can have a repair of these little defects that occur in the genes and the DNA as we get older during the duplication of DNA. Maybe that has to do with telomeres. We'll talk about that. And it mimics something we call calorie restriction. It has been shown that calorie restriction, have a very low calorie diet, increases longevity. You always get the picture of the little guru in India who's skinny, and he lives till 100 some years old. He has a longer life because of calorie restriction. We're not really advocating that much, but it is a scientific term to say that if you do calorie restriction, you live longer. Well, resveratrol mimics that effect on your body, which is kind of helpful. You don't have to starve yourself, just take some resveratrol. CoQ10 is the next one. It's a main nutrient for production of energy in our body through the mitochondria, and it powerhouses all of our cells, including our muscles. It is an antioxidant too. It improves your heart health. It decreases migraine headaches, improves hypertension, and improves brain health. But as we get older, once again, just like all the other things, our CoQ10 levels fall. So therefore, it would behoove us to all take some CoQ10 on a daily basis. Good for us. Now we get to the interesting part, if it hasn't already been interesting, but the interesting part now is telomere shortening. It's the basis of aging. As I said, telomeres are the little protective parts at the ends of each of the chromosomes. And as we age and the cells divide, each time we age, the telomere shortens, and pretty soon when it shortens so much that it doesn't divide anymore, and the cell dies. So shortening of the telomere may be the root cause of cellular aging and mitochondrial destruction. Here's a graph showing that telomere length shortens as we get older. If you think about it, if all of our cells slowly shorten their telomeres as we age, what happens to our germ cells? Because our germ cells divide, and the sperm and the egg meet, and they produce another species. Well, if they had shortening of their telomeres, we'd be extinct centuries ago, eons ago. But they don't shorten. The gene cells don't shorten. The sperm and the eggs, they don't shorten the telomeres. Why? Well, they found out the reason why is because there's this little area on the chromosome of the sperm or the egg that is activated. And when that's activated, the division results in the telomere maintaining its length. In other words, the activation produces a compound called Telomerase, and it prevents the shortening that would occur naturally in all our cells, but it doesn't happen in the eggs and the sperm. And therefore we continue to be a species. So do other animals. Wow, wouldn't it be neat if we could get that thing to activate in every one of our cells, to activate that telomerase, that little area on the gene to produce telomerase for every one of our cells? So every one of our cells, when they divide, the telomere wouldn't shorten? That would be kind of neat. And so they found a substance that does do that. It's called telomerase. You can actually take a telomerase activator. Telomerase is an enzyme that maintains and repairs those short telomeres by re-elongating them. It keeps on, every time they divide, it puts it back on again, and so they don't shorten much. It thus can preserve your lifespan, and it preserves your body's cells, and it might even improve your lifespan, which is not a bad deal. There's a product that we sell called TA65. It's made from a Chinese herb, astragalus root. And what it does is it stimulates that little area on the chromosome to produce the telomerase. So therefore it's called TA, telomerase activator. And 65 years old is about when you want to start doing it, but if you want to start younger, you can. It's a promising new idea that could boost lifespan, maybe more than 50 years. Telomere length, when you add antioxidants to your blood, also increases. So, wow. We have a little bit of unity here to our aging concepts. We said oxidation ages a person. Antioxidants decrease that aging. Wow, look at what else antioxidants do. They keep your telomeres a little bit longer. So taking antioxidants is good. What about immunity? We talked about our immunity goes down as we get older. Well, if you can boost your immunity, wow, look at, you can increase your length of your telomeres. Everything kind of fits together. Vitamin D, we talked about that. What a wonderful stuff. It increases your telomere length. Simple things you can do. Well, does it do other things? Lengthening your telomeres, does it do other things? And there's lots of studies out there that says it does a lot of other good things. Cardiovascular disease is decreased if you lengthen your telomeres. Short telomeres are linked to heart disease. Here's a Denmark study. People with short telomeres had a 50% increased risk of heart attack, 25% increased risk of early death. Pretty significant study. Another study showed that short telomeres had 280% to 320% increased risk of heart attack if you had short telomeres. Pretty significant. So let's get those telomeres up. Let's do the right things. We don't want to have heart failure. People with heart failure had telomeres that were 40% shorter than normal in this study. Lots of different studies. Basically, bottom line, it preserves your heart function, and they also help your diabetes. If you're going to develop diabetes, you want to keep your telomeres up there because it's better for your health there. So we like to recommend TA65. I take it myself. I think it's a wonderful product. It's not going to hurt. It may help. You take 1 to 3 tablets per day, depending on how much money you want to spend, because it is expensive. It costs, when they first came out with TA65 back, I remember seeing this in about 2005. It was pretty expensive. The early 2000, it was pretty expensive, about $22,000 per year. But what's interesting is the guy who bought the company, TA Sciences, is a venture capitalist, and he said, you know, I want to give this to my friends. So he had all his friends take it, and it ended up, they accumulated a tremendous amount of data. And what happened with all his friends, they had less heart disease, less cancer, they were better, and now we're finding that, you know, it was a theoretical good thing for us to do, and now we see it actually happening in clinical practice. And because of that, it's out there, it's mass-produced nowadays, so it's lower now. It's not $22,000 per year, it's about $200 per month is the cost of TA65 at this date right now. And the bottom line is it's safe. There's no side effects. It's not going to increase your risk of any problems. It decreases your risk. And it may potentially increase longevity. But let's do all the other things that might increase your telomere length. Resveratrol does it. It's been shown through research that you can have a significant increase in telomerase activity if you just do the resveratrol. Remember we mentioned resveratrol works right on the DNA. Well, this is one of the things that it seems to do. Gamma and tocopherols and alpha, it seems to protect against telomere shortening by activating and restoring telomerase, another one. Pretty easy things to do. And vitamin C slows down telomere loss by 62%. So in summary, what should you take? Bunch of stuff. Handfuls of nutrients. And I do every one of these every night. We go over these a little bit. In summary, the supplements you should take is omegas, omega-3, particularly EPA and DHA, anti-inflammatory and antioxidants. You should take vitamin C, great antioxidant, maybe decreases that telomere shortening. Vitamin D, we mentioned that. A lot of stuff you can do. It does a lot of good things, decreases cancer, but you need an adequate amount. Maybe get some blood tests done on that to find out. Vitamin D is important. We talked about calcium a little bit, the gamma vitamin E, and then DHEA. Everybody should have an adequate amount of the mother of all hormones, DHEA, great antioxidants. Studies show that if you live long enough, and you might have a higher amount of DHEA in your body. Melatonin, we discussed that. Curcumin, good anti-inflammatory. Resveratrol does a lot of stuff directly on the DNA. CoQ10, we talked about that. And of course, TA65. The other things I'd like to summarize with is we want to reduce our weight. Get the weight off. Forget that obesitis. Try not to get that. Make yourself as thin as you can. Remember about calorie restriction. Getting thin is really important. Exercising. If you just walk an hour a day, you'll increase your life expectancy around 2 years. It is a great boost for a lot of different things. A recent study from UCSF showed that traumatic and chronic stressful life events are associated with a shortening of telomeres. And if you do physical activity, you can moderate that impact. So stress is a very important thing, and not only do we believe that you should have nutritional health, but you should also have emotional, spiritual health too. We should all maintain optimism. Studies show, believe it or not, that if you have good optimism, you can protect yourself from degenerative processes. Cardiovascular disease is decreased if you're optimistic about stuff, and that's independent of other factors. Optimism is most robustly associated with restorative health behaviors and biological function. Next thing, if things have gone wrong, you need to forgive. We have to have that ability to forgive. Forgiveness is associated with lower levels of anxiety and depression and perceived stress, as well as it can decrease your cholesterol levels. Amazingly, don't ask me exactly how it does that, but it does. Maybe it has to do with a more calming attitude, because you forgive people not for them, but for yourself, for your benefit. It does improve cardiac patients. Forgiveness may be associated with a reduced risk for future cardiovascular events. And then happiness. We all should maintain as much happiness as we can. It's a choice. Being happy is a choice. You can either be happy or you can be depressed. But the problem is depressive feelings are associated with an increased risk of lots of different problems. In this one study, they talked about stroke, venous thromboembolic effects. But just being happy and not being depressed helps you to have a happier, healthier life. So that is our goal. The goal for anti-aging, for us to live healthier, happier, and longer, but with better quality of life. Thank you for attending my little talk tonight.